before I put the song on.
Me too.
So
but
I
a
felt
different
like,
tune.
Yeah, so I felt like it was playing. I was like, the music is going. The music flows through us. If you think about it, the music's really the friends we made along the way. And then I realized, oh, I'm the one who has to push the button and play the music. And now we're on. David and Jordan with you here for a little bit of live NWSL U.S. Women's National Team action. If you're listening via podcast, welcome and thank you. We've got a big show coming up for you. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to break down the U.S. Women's National Team's newest roster, going into the games against Ireland and Canada coming up this summer. We will talk about the games we saw in NWSL. We were very excited for this Louisville-Kansas City game. So was Kansas City. Louisville maybe a little less excited, or maybe they just didn't get the schedule on the game time, which is something that totally happens. And we'll talk about that as well as now the weekend to come, because pretty much the same slate of teams have big games. And I think we're going to put together a nice little report card coming out of these 2 weeks going into this international break. But I think, Jordan, you had said you'd wanted to do about 35, 40 minutes on Ulsan Hyundai's defensive block and how they defend as a team.
Yeah.
And the floor to you.
Yeah, I also wanted to start it with na 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 na. If anybody else is watching this Club World Cup, that is living rent-free inside of your brain. Yeah, Ulsan, where do I start, really? If you want a good tactical analysis of what they're doing, just watch the game from last night. It's pretty cool though, Goss. I'm calling Club World Cup games. Like, never in well, I've dreamed of being a part of a World Cup, and I didn't think it would be a Club World Cup because this iteration is brand new, but it's pretty stinking cool. I have had some pinch me moments, that's for sure.
It's been awesome hearing you on the games. It definitely kept me on probably longer than I would have on watching the rain-delayed Ulsan Hyundai Mamelodi
yes.
Sundowns, but you went quick to Sundowns, which is a cool nickname to have.
Know your strengths and weaknesses.
Know your strengths and weaknesses. You got to call the Flamengo game, that's one of those ones I think is just really cool. We have heard the reports, I believe, and I think I said it, coming off Gotham's CONCACAF W Championship, that there will be a women's edition of this that FIFA is going to put together. This tournament has been fascinating on the men's side, just watching things that you've never seen on the same field play out. And I think one of the things I've come away with is the game's a lot closer than you realize. And I actually think clubs shows that more than national team, because teams are more cohesive and can work a little together. But you don't have this debate on the men's side of which is the best league in the world, in which there are leagues that never play in competitive competition. And that's where a women's Club World Cup becomes really interesting. Like, if you can imagine a sold-out stadium in DC with Washington playing Arsenal, and I know we saw it last year in a friendly, but the potential, I think, on the women's side is even bigger than on the men's side.
It's at least there. Is it bigger? I don't know, but I think it would really help us understand where the game is at in different leagues to be able to compare some of the best from around the world. And I think that's been the fun way about it. You know, just my game last night, Ulsan didn't have the ball at all, and yet they still could have won that game with like some really good defensive tactics, switching at halftime with some of those. There's just nuances to the way the game's played in South Korea versus South Africa, and it has been really cool to get to see that firsthand. And we want this on the women's side. I think it's in 2028, so it's not like, don't hold your breath. Like, it is in a little while.
Although we said that when every World Cup host gets announced, and then they're all like, oh, they're around the corner.
True, it happens quickly. But yeah, and it will go fast, right? Because next year's Men's World Cup, then Women's World Cup, then the Women's Club World Cup.
Yeah.
There you go.
We saw it in the CONCACAF W, I think, right? Compared to the Summer League series last year, I think you saw having home field advantage make things a little bit more competitive. And I think the more experience you get on the field in moments like this, where there's like the same as you're feeling, I think, off the field, of like pinch me moments for players. Yeah. If you live it a little bit more often, maybe then it becomes less intimidating. We're obviously going to see an expanded World Cup in 2027. I think that's more dangerous to me than the Club World Cup, of like, I think the range of quality and talent and cohesion, and I think the big one is resources. That is going to look even more stark than it would at a Club World Cup, because I think you do have that sort of like, you have teams, what we're seeing here, of like teams that are underdogs, but like heart of a champion stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you've been through battles together and you've won. So there's some belief to stick together, with national teams don't always have, because they're not together as often and all of that. That was a huge non sequitur we went through.
Yeah.
But I think really fun to think about, because this 2 weeks has been this like weird fever dream of like seeing this thing you've never seen. Thinking about it on the women's side, I think is really, really exciting and really interesting. To go to that a little bit, Washington Spirit did add another attacking player. I believe it's the first full Italian international to now come to NWSL. So starting to continue to see, what does the game that's played here look like and translate to other parts of the world? Shout out to John Rollins in the chat, who is an Orlando native and I believe was at the game last night, and said the Ulsan fans in the wall understood the assignment. So two of 600, or 3 of 600
John,
if you include
me. I appreciate it.
Who were locked in for this game. Let's dig into NWSL. We spent a lot of time last week talking about Louisville. They were tied with Kansas City, the 2 hottest teams in the league. They were in the best form in their club's history, winning 4 out of 5. And this was going to be the benchmark. This was going to be the test. What would they do going on the road to the best team in the league and being tested in their style in a different way? I did the weekend recap, and I kind of flip-flopped on this. They went down 3-0 in 19 minutes, and it looked like played off the field. They claw back to 3-2, and eventually lose 4-2. Shawinga with a stoppage time goal to sort of seal things. Do you have a grade for what this team is and what they showed coming out of this one game?
I feel like in the first half, that was poor, right? Yeah. It was poor, high line. It looked with that Cooper goal, it looked like they were trying to put her offside. Everybody's arms go up, like an offside trap looking. Just bizarre, with not only when you have Shawinga, but Michelle Cooper has been lethal. And then in the second half, I would say they looked a lot better. And so, I don't know, is it an average grade here? Like, is it the average of the both halves? Right. I would say a C+, B-, because I think they could be, if they would have played in the first half the way they played in the second half, I think we're talking about a Louisville team who goes in to Kansas City like they did last year and at least gets a point. And they could have done that in this game, but they just started off so slow. They were a little lethargic in the first half. And then in the second half, the thing that I felt they were being the aggressor in a lot of moments. Granted, Kansas City plays this game a lot, right, Goss? Right. You see them score early. They sit back. They're like, even if we give up a couple, like, we're fine. Honestly, a little bit, right? It's very different than I think when Orlando gives up a goal or scores a goal early. Orlando's like, you're not scoring against us. I would say C+. Their identity started to show more in the second half of winning first and second balls, being a little bit quicker when they do get the ball on regains in the attacking third to play it out of that space quickly or combine quickly through the space. But for Louisville, I think they're going to be disappointed about the first half and really going to try to right the wrong, because it doesn't get easier. Here you go. We got Orlando this weekend. Yeah, they are in this run that is ridiculous. So they have Orlando this weekend. Then we have this international summer break. We have Euros. We've got Copa America. I think Euros starts like July 1st. Then coming back from that, Louisville hosts Kansas City. Then they go to Orlando. Then they go to Washington Spirit. Then they go to San Diego. So yes, there's this huge break in between. There's a transfer window. Like, things will change. That's wild. But across these 6 games, they are arguably playing the 3 or 4 best teams, however you want to count that. And they are playing the 2 reigning finalists, or one of the reigning my words are everywhere. Reigning champion and the league leader. They are playing them twice in this span. So we're going to learn a ton. I think it's a little unfortunate that we talked about it, so everyone knows that there was going to be questions on how you played that pressing style, and they kind of just went in and ignored all the questions. Yeah. And the answer was you couldn't. And like, that doesn't feel realistic to me, to go into this game and say, yeah, we're just going to do what we do. And I think even specifically, I remember last week you bringing up, like, and you can overload on Shawinga and try and slow that down, and then Cooper is going to have space. And that was the exact story. Not only do they try and pull an offside trap on that second, on Michelle Cooper's goal, your fullbacks are pushed so high up the field,
And Cooper doesn't even break out that early. And yet she's the only one on her entire side of the field from midfield all the way on. And that I just think is, again, a lack of awareness of what you're going up against. I don't mind belief. I don't mind saying, like, we think we're good. And if we do what we do at our best, but you're going to their building, there has to be some level of recognition. And I don't know that that even really came in the second half. It was just like you said, Game State, Kansas City sitting a little bit deeper, Louisville getting a little bit more confident. But I don't know that there was a ton of specific tactical things in which they shifted. What I said on the recap show was then they brought Borges on in the 60th. They get the goal. I don't want to say that it's because of that. And I think that brings a little more possession to their team in midfield. Yeah, it changes the way they play. She can't press the same way, but also you can play through pressure in different ways. The problem for Louisville is that hasn't been the road to success. So how far do you lean into that in some of these big games coming up?
Yeah, it's a good point. And it'll be interesting how they start to, when they pick and choose utilizing Ari Borges, because now you're playing Orlando. You would think playing a team like Orlando, who typically have two central midfielders, you would use a player like Ari, because then you can overload that with a really good footballing player and utilize that extra number centrally. But it has been pretty evident from what we've seen in that run that Louisville had. It was all about our identity is high press, turn the ball over high on the field, be difficult to play against. And not that Ari doesn't give them that. They get it more from other players. So I'm interested to see what Louisville looks like this weekend. They're at least at home. Don't have to deal with fans right on top of them like they had to in Kansas City. But yeah, I think it'll be a really good, did we learn anything from that game? And can we execute what we learned?
Yeah. Yeah. It will be a good example to see what they learn and where they move forward. Then we go into the offseason, or not the offseason, this break.
Feels like it.
It does, with the transfer window open. Louisville were really quiet in the offseason. I think some of that was belief in the group they had. I think some of that is still trying to find their feet of where they sit in overall spending across the league. I wonder if whether or not even they get a good result in this one, if that convinces ownership, front office to open up the books a little and say, okay, we've got a real shot at something this year. And is that enough of a focus thing? They made the trade for Balser last year because they thought they had a road to the playoffs.
Right.
This would be a different way because it would, with the lack of trades and all of that, you need to spend some money to bring a player in, whether that's inside the league or outside the league. But they seem like a prime candidate to look around. And for them, it might be depth. It may not even be starters, but this team needs to get a little bit deeper because they're relying on a lot of rookies and they're relying on a lot of players who don't have clear backups, where if you get an injury or if the opponent plays a different style, they don't really have another ace up the sleeve that they can go to. And I think that's going to decide a lot for them going forward. For Kansas City, by the way, just don't mess with them.
Yeah. Don't mess with us. Not in our house, baby.
It is.
Did you see the clip of the football player, the Chiefs player?
Yes. I don't know his name because I don't know the names of NFL
but I'm
draft
like,
picks.
dude, stay in your lane. You're going to take our jobs.
I just love that he was fully committed.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, Michelle Cooper's best player on the field, and now every other player around me, they have to think that too.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to keep doing stuff to promote it. It was really, really fun to watch. I think it was their entire rookie class that came to the game. There's nothing like a Casey Curran game.
No, not
and
yet.
I think for a lot of people, if you're not in a market that has a team, you have no idea. If you're in some other markets, it's not the same experience. I can't imagine going to a Casey Curran game and then not saying I'm a fan of this and I want to watch more of this and I want to experience it. And the way they play.
Yeah, it's just so fast-paced, aggressive, direct, go at you that once you're there, they will hook you because they are deadly in that arena, and they put on a show. It was fun. They won every ball centrally, just suffocated Louisville, and should have had more goals. They really should have had more goals. Yeah. And I think that's one of the fun things about this style that they play is you're never gonna go to that field and not feel like you didn't get a show. And they're there to entertain. Like, that's our jobs, right? As players, we want to entertain the fans, and they figured it out there.
And that symbiotic relationship of fans get excited, so the team pushes harder. There's no team that's easier to do that for than this Kansas City team, like you said, of just like constantly putting on pressure. Izzy Rodriguez, another big game, adds her name now to this national team pool, as we're going to talk about coming up, as Emma Hayes giving the European players outside of Naomi Girma the summer off. And so a lot of players getting their first opportunities. But before we get there, let's talk about a couple other big NWSL games from the weekend that was. I'm going to skip over to the last game of the weekend and go to Portland here, because Portland had a big home win over the Washington Spirit. They remain undefeated at home. Two of the really young pieces in this team get goals. They are another squad that's sending some young players to this U.S. women's national team pool. But I've sort of talked about it on the recaps and talked about it a bit with you of, I think there's still a huge range in performances from Portland because they're so young. But like, this is the model. And I think what's really exciting about this game is that midfield three of experienced players carried them through this. And that feels repeatable between Sagita, Fleming, and Coffey.
It is, and you have to rely on those three when there's so many changes everywhere else around them. Jaden Perry didn't play, right? Didn't.
Now you're questioning me at the worst possible
Yeah,
time.
now but then Kaya Hanks came off with an injury. Still no word on what happened to Hanks, and those are two really young, bright players.
Obeys and Hyatt.
Right. And that Perry had a knock, I believe. So, it's in there somewhere. It's in the brain
below South African and South Korean soccer
just for the moment. And I think when you can't really, with younger players, you just don't expect consistency. And that's the hardest thing as a professional, to be consistent, to go into a game and say, I know that Jordan is going to give me XYZ because that's what she always gives me.
Yeah.
That is something that you have to build as a pro. And I think when you have a midfield with Fleming, Zagita, Coffey, you can have a stable piece where you can get the ball at whatever moment, you can win the ball back, and you could set the tone. So I think that is really big. Sam Coffey has been great. I know Jessie Fleming had herself a day, and she's been really on and off. And so could this be a good week for her to kind of kickstart? It's weird because she's been in the league for a while, but I don't feel like we've seen the best of her.
I think Jackie D in the chat just said Fleming's best game for Portland. That was my thought the whole time too.
Yeah.
It was talk about consistency. It was the most dominant performance the full time on the field for her. And it was, I think, our first great example, like we've seen for Canada, of both being goal creating dangerous and controlling pace of game. She just hasn't been able to do that in NWSL. And this was a difference for her. And it wasn't against an easy opponent.
Right.
And it wasn't against an easy midfield. So I think this could be a changing for her. And I think part of it could be starting to like feel the comfort about what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Coffey is like the easiest central midfield partner probably to play with right now in the league.
Probably, yeah.
And now that I think you understand, okay, these young players are runners around me, and I know that they're going to make the runs into the channel at this time. And so you saw Fleming on that second goal, right? Okay, Reed's Moultrie has the ball. Know that you can come, be a partner, she'll attack. And then it's maybe a little fortunate, but helps set up Turner on the goal. And I think you're seeing that for this team and for her maybe in a different way than we did all of last year.
Yeah, and we want her to be successful. Yeah. Like this league, that team is better with a Jessie Fleming with all the tools and expressing those and utilizing them. But it hasn't worked. It feels like at times the game is just bypassing her and she's chasing. And I loved watching her create and find the little spaces to help Portland in the way that they attacked. Yeah, this Portland team has just surprised a lot of us.
Yeah, they have. They've surprised. They've entertained. And I think it's good to see the reward for some of them to get into national team conversations for multiple countries. I think Ali Du's been a really nice addition. Yeah, and slightly unexpected from me. It felt more like a depth and sort of like we need to make moves because so much fell apart right before the season. And now you're looking at a player who was a starter for Canada coming into her time in Portland, has probably established that through her play in Portland, locked in as a starter, and they're going to play against the U.S. in Washington, D.C. coming up on July 2nd, which is going to be a really cool game to watch. But I think you come out of this weekend and at the same time saying this about Louisville, like, I think Portland's performance was one of the shows, and now they've reestablished home field as dominance. And can they go on the road and start to pick up more points? And it feels like a top 5 team right now. And the question is just how high they can go.
Yeah, I think it's also the question of how healthy they can stay.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like they're top 5 when they have some of these pieces that right now in the middle of the week, we don't know what and I'm not going to speculate, but I did not like the way that looked with Hanks, and it really makes me worry. And I didn't quite know what was going on with Perry, but for her to have the start that she did, probably the hardest start for a rookie playing against Kansas City and getting walloped, and then coming back and showing consistency game after game, and now not being available. Without those two, I mean, center back, you're maybe at a little bit better of a place, but how many forwards have they gone through this year? And to finally, to see Kaya Hanks come in and have that flair, I think their success will probably hinge on that.
We'll talk about Olivia Moultrie, I think, a little bit more in the national team conversation. On the Washington side, real quick, it doesn't get easier for them, by the way. They go to San Diego this weekend, which is a brutal week. And that is another Sunday game.
They might have just stayed out there. Wouldn't you just stay?
I would, except you kind of almost hope to have less of a layoff then.
Yeah,
and not
that's true.
have Sunday to Sunday. They do, but I think you're right. And we'll see, no matter what. They've got a new name in the conversation. Sofia Cantore has joined the team, 25-year-old Italian international from Juventus, 40 goals, 20 assists in league play in Italy, mainly with Juve a few years on loan, 40 caps, 5 goals for the Italian national team. I said off the top, the first full Italian international to come and play in NWSL. The belief is it's about a $350,000 fee to bring her in, which was more than Bayern Munich put up. So that was the competition for this player. It's a player who probably, when healthy, isn't a starter right now, even with all that money spent. And I think it's a sign of what happened last year, which was Washington came into the summer break as one of the best teams, and they added Esme Morgan, and they added Rose Kouassi, and you kind of wondered, like, where's the minutes? And unfortunately for them, the minutes always come, but also I think they're trying to build something special, and that special thing is, like, having multiple players who are constantly challenging to be starters across the field.
I'm just curious when this, because usually we get word of it, but it's already been a done deal for a while. I just wonder, how you tell a player, well, you wanted to come here and play for Jonah Heraldes, and actually he's not going to be here anymore. Which it just throws a funny wrench in it. I think we've talked a lot about Adrian Gonzalez and how great he's going to be. But this Washington team, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they keep adding pieces that seem to be not just quality players, but national team players with great backgrounds who can come in, especially if you look, I mean, it's really all levels of the field, but that front, that attacking group is filled with internationals who they've got to be, however they're doing their books, it must be some really good bookkeeping, because they have figured out a way to get some excellent players in who can be difference makers. We've already seen it. Even bringing in a player like Gift Monday this year, who maybe doesn't have that reputation, but is still an international and has proven to translate really well to NWSL. So I'm excited to have an Italian in the league and to learn how Washington does this.
Are you gonna fix my pronunciation, or you feel okay about it?
I do not know how to say her last name, so I'm not going to change it.
Good.
I'm going to call her Sofia until I know how to say her last name.
So I think on the international thing, it's fascinating. To add Bernal, Gabby Carl, right? You're talking about a full international who is in rotation at the fullback position. Obviously, the adds they've made in central midfield. I do think a large part of this, probably, if we were to see it, is that whole middle is draft picks on their rookie deals. Yeah. So that gives a little bit of flexibility for them to open some stuff up, and being able to bring a player in on loan from Lyonnais probably doesn't hurt as well.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's really, really fascinating to see how they've done this. Also, we did see Ule Sarr in the building, not playing 2 weeks ago, which would be a huge deal for them now. On the flip side, I don't know how much you're going to trust it. So adding another center forward option or an attacking option because of the flexibility they have is really big.
I'll just say Ashley Hatch is out with a back injury.
Yeah.
What is going on there?
I don't know. It is, yeah. It is wild, and it's a little bit scary. And
it is.
The rest of the group is finally getting healthy. Croy is back. Hal Hirschfeld is back. Kruger has been back. The whole back line is pretty healthy, but they can't do it top to bottom as a team, which I think is really, really unfortunate. Last year when they made the Rose Kouassi move, we talked about it. It was a future move. It was for depth. Yeah. She ends up starting and being a huge factor in the postseason. Mm-hmm. So I think you trust this Washington team to understand where they can get some more support and where they can build this roster out. So a big move for them. We've got some big games coming up this weekend. The weekend closes with San Diego hosting Washington, as I said. So that's Sunday at 10 p.m. I want to talk about Kenza Dali for a moment.
Okay.
She's been maybe the best midfielder in the league this year from a deep position. This weekend, Jonas Eidevall said there's going to be more space. I want to play you higher. So she decided she'd be the best 10 in the league this weekend. And like the first 45 minutes were electric. And there was a moment, because I watched the game back later, where I was like, I guess I hit highlights. Because it just kept being Kenza Dali in the half space, creating. And I was like, nah, I've been watching for 25 minutes, and it's 25 minutes in. Yeah. It was an absurd performance.
Well, when she came into the league, I remember talking about her specifically in our previews. And I was like, she's a 10. Right. She's going to help get more goals because they were struggling in goals. And to see her play in that, this is why I thought she was 10. This is why she is a 10. She is so good in tight spaces, connecting the lines, finding that final pass, scoring goals, all of the things. I love Kenza Dali. She is such a smart footballer, and to get to watch that in our league with a team that is really reinventing themselves, it's been really fun to see her kind of shape and mold who they're going to be no matter where she's playing. She is her fingerprints are all over the game, and yeah, it was pretty good one for her this past weekend. It should be fun against Washington too, because that is such a good, strong midfield to see how she operates.
Corey Bethune looking fully healthy, which I think you assume she gets dropped a little deeper once again and has defensive responsibility to try and contain Bethune, but this is not a San Diego team that's built that way, so they will try and control possession, which I think sets up really well for a good back and forth game. Maria Sanchez came off the bench in this one, scored a goal around the rumors that she is headed to Tigres to join Diana Ordonez. Came off the bench at halftime, which is like, it's not like a late game sub. And they were up 2-0 at the time. I thought it was a very interesting move. And I wonder if there's more going on behind the scenes conversations about, no, we actually want you to be a part of this project or not. And so San Diego, I think for them, the big fear would be a lack of depth. Like they've rebuilt so much of the roster that it hasn't been built that deep yet.
Yeah.
And so maybe in a normal world, you say, okay, if we get a good offer, like we understand you want to move on. But now you look at how well you're doing and you say, well, we'd actually really love to keep you to the end of the year to see if we can push for a home playoff game or a top 2 spot.
It's also, Maria Sanchez has the biggest contract. That, I mean,
which was why last week I thought, if you can get someone to take it, the performances you're getting from Coralie and Barcenas.
Yeah.
And I'm missing a name right now.
You are missing Ascanio, of course.
Then that covers that. But if you also want to be competitive, you're competitive. Do you really want to step away from that?
Yeah. Not just competitive. Like, it feels to me like they want to win.
Yeah.
Like, they want to find success now. And if you do get rid of, you do trade Sanchez or sell her, it would be a sale. What can you'd have to have purpose with that money, and you'd have to purposely go get players who would add what she adds, which I think has been has had wild variations over the years of her time in NWSL. But when she is clicking, it's hard to find a better left-footed player in this league that
Yeah.
can serve a ball on a dime to good players in attacking positions, and great. She can be great in and around the box too. That adds the number of goals this year, so it is really interesting. And we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what Cami Ashton does with that.
Yeah. Reminder that Kenza Dali was not called up to the France team for the Euros. Cascarino is. So
no Pearl?
France... What?
No Pearl Maroney either?
I don't believe so.
She's good. I would love to see who... I would just love to see her get a shot to see, like, comparatively what she looks like. No,
Cascarino is the only NWSL player on the roster.
Okay.
So either it's a really good midfield or someone's getting left out that deserves...
I heard that there was like some, I don't know, like not drama, but something around
there has been there has been some with Renard as well. Kenza Dali kind of was part of this veteran group that got left out for the last window to see new things, and then also got left off this European roster. Friday night, we mentioned it, Louisville against hosting Orlando, which starts, as a part of this crazy streak. At the same time, Kansas City hosts Angel City. So both 8 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. You're going to have to get your dual screens out. Those are both kind of must watch. I think Louisville, Orlando, one we're trying to see more from, but Angel City can open up and play. Like, I think they'll give up chances, but I think they'll feel comfortable in the game states that Kansas City creates more so than most of the opponents do in NWSL.
Yeah, I do think they will. And it's an Angel City team that when they're at their best, they're actually building through the channels, right? They're not going through the center portion of the field, which if you try to build like that against Kansas City, they're just like, whoop, got the ball, and now we're going. So it'll be interesting to see how Angel City manages because if they want to build down their right with Giselle Thompson and there's a little pressure pocket, like how do they get in beyond the back line then? So their movement in those areas is going to be really key. But when you said all those games, Goss, all I thought of was like, you better have some water and some oxygen because those are going to be really quick games.
Yeah, they are both going to be really, really fun to watch. For Angel City, trying to bounce back from a heartbreaking loss at home to North Carolina. Brianna Pinto's 95th minute winner for North Carolina. They have only played dramatic games this year. So North Carolina also one where you're like, probably must tune in, especially for the last 15, 20 minutes of their games. Let's dig into the national team here, which ends up being pretty much an NWSL conversation as well. Naomi Girma, the lone player coming from Europe for this one. June 26th and 29th, the national team will play against Ireland. The first game of that is in Denver. Soccerwise is for Denver, so
always.
Shout out to the big Denver. I don't know the nickname for the Mile High City. The Mile High. Shout out to the Mile High City. And then on July 2nd, the final game of the camp is, as I mentioned, in Washington, D.C. That one's against Canada. So a fun rivalry game going into a vacation weekend. That should feel really, really big. And I think for a U.S. team that's like looking for ways to test themselves, this is a really good scheduling move by them. And Emma is going to get to see a lot of new faces in this group. There's some returning pieces because there has been such a wide sort of net cast over the last year of players getting opportunities. There are even more in this side. The goalkeepers that you'd expect, but Angelina Anderson gets called into this one with Claudia Dickey and Mandy McGlynn. A number of the defenders who were newer to the team, like Patterson and Abello, recalled, but I mentioned Izzy Rodriguez. One of the new names, Lily Reel, gets called in. Jordan Bug as well to be a part of this group. It's awesome to see Corey Bethune back into the national team fully healthy. One of the names that I was most excited to see on this entire list was Sam Meza. I think she's been phenomenal this season. Yep. It's not exactly in the same style that the U.S. plays, but also is eligible, I believe, for Mexico. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is sort of like a little overture to say you are definitely part of our plans. And then in the front line, all players who have been around, the Emma Sears, the Michelle Coopers, Ali Sentnors, they've been getting call-ups because there's been no triple espresso. Now they get an opportunity once again. I would say of all the players that got their first call, were you going to ask me something?
Oh, I was going to say there's 5 players, I believe, that have had their first call. Anderson
for this.
Yeah, Anderson, Bug, Real, Rodriguez, and
Meza.
Meza.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me your one.
Jordan Bug. You know, I
just
love
love
Jordan
Jordans.
Bug's game.
Oh, I thought you said Jordans.
Yeah, no, all Jordans. Just a huge fan, whether they're calling South Korean soccer or playing for the U.S. national team. I am there in my Jordans, wearing a Jordan,
Yes.
just to celebrate them. I think she's special. I think she has a huge ceiling. I don't know that she's ready today, but like this is the type of camp you give a player like that an opportunity. I would be fascinated to see her paired with Naomi Girma and to see how their games sort of can complement each other and maybe dominate in a lot of ways as a pairing. And I think a lot of people compare Bug to Girma, which is an unfair comparison for anyone, but you see it coming out of college being so ready to play at the pro level. I think a decent chunk of passing falls on Bug's shoulders because of the 3 center back setup and the way Seattle plays, but they don't dominate possession as much as this U.S. women's national team does. So she's going to be pushed a little bit more when she gets opportunities, but this is one of those players where every time one of these rosters come out of like new players are getting chances, I've been looking for her name. And so to finally see it, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that too. I think, and we've talked about this a lot, the thing is she's a right center back though.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised with this. This isn't my favorite player to get called up, but I do like Lily Real, but she's been playing outside back. She's a center back and a left center back. I think we will see her in the left side playing with either it's Girma or one of the other right-sided center backs in this camp at some point, just because you have to see who you can have. And this is where I'm really bummed that Jaden Perry is injured, because it feels like that would have been the choice, the left-footed center back to have in that spot. So I am very excited for Jordan Bug, and she is a very calm demeanor and very introverted. And I am interested to see how this goes, where it is a lot, you know, when you're at camp, it is a lot of information. You're meeting all these new people. And, you know, that's part of it, is like, how do you interact and how do you become a part of the group? So hopefully this will be a little bit easier, because there's a lot of players that she's played with and have known very well. But this is hard. I like a lot of these players.
You don't have to have one, by the way. This is not like a hard and set rule.
I love Sam Meza's getting in there, but Izzy Rodriguez has been really good for the last few years in Kansas City. And as an outside back, you should feel in this league right now as an American that if I perform well, I'm going to get an opportunity. And I'm excited. Unless you're Casey Kruger, then don't even think about it.
Yeah. Sucks.
I know, it really sucks. I love that Izzy Rodriguez gets a call, and it'll be interesting to see how she fits in, because it is a very different, there's demands that are different from what she has in the club level, so it'll stretch her a little bit, and that's good. It's always good to be asked different things and see if you can execute. So and we better see some goalkeepers. You bring in 2 new, Claudia Dickey came in the last camp, Angelina Anderson comes in this one. I hope we see all of them at some point.
There's a few names that I think are interesting that aren't here, and you could probably go pretty long with this list. I said literally last week, I was like, I think Taylor Flint's like going down the Vanessa DiBernardo road of like, we just don't know, but it keeps happening. What's odd is a window like this, where Izzy Rodriguez is kind of in the same boat of like, it felt like she's entering her prime, still has plenty of time, but like didn't get called in young, Carriobello as well. And now those players are getting called in, and they're not getting the opportunities. And I don't know like what that's tied to. I've said the same with Casey Murphy. I think Casey Murphy's been one of the 3 best goalkeepers in NWSL for the last 18 months. And I understand some of these other goalies, the Claudia Dickeys, Angelina Andersons of the world, Silkowitz, have popped this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that gets rewarded over
consistency
in performance.
Yeah, this has been the most difficult, I would say, most talked about conversation actually when we're at Vista calling games is the goalkeeper conversation, and how difficult this open number one spot has been on the mentality of a lot of these goalkeepers. Because of what we're seeing when they're playing games. Uncharacteristic mistakes. I think all of those goalkeepers that we just named have made mistakes this year that are not like themselves. And if you're playing the goalkeeping position, you have to be willing to face the highest of stakes, right? Because there's sometimes where it comes down between you and an attacker, and if you don't make that save, your team loses. And so you have to be okay with carrying that weight, but the weight feels like it's dampening, dimming some of their light. And so it's hard with a Casey Murphy because she hasn't been playing that well. She really hasn't. She's making mistakes and decisions that she wouldn't typically make. So is that because she's not getting called in? And then do you call her in even though she's not playing well right now because you know what she has over the long run? Talk about a mind game.
But it's hard to watch Mandy McGlynn's season and say what Casey Murphy's doing is not good enough to... And we're not even bringing up Aubrey Kingsbury in this conversation.
Right.
Maybe has a bigger point than both of them. It's really fascinating. And obviously, I think Emma Hayes has earned a lot of leeway to function in all of this. Some of the other players to mention, by the way, we went through, but Claire Hutton, I think exciting to see her involved once again. Awesome to see Corey Bethune.
Yeah. This
will really be the first time of playing at the height of her powers. And probably because of the absences can be central to this team. And I think if you look at what Jaden Shaw brought against Japan, I think it was playing as that 10 or maybe Brazil. That's sort of how Corey Bethune can play, but covering even more space. And I think affecting the game even more with her ability to run at defenders and change team shape. And then Olivia Moultrie. It's been phenomenal for Portland and helped set up another goal this weekend. One of the best attackers in the league across every facet. So dribbling and passing. And therefore, it's really hard to decide as a defense what you want to do with her. Can play out wide, can play central. I think a player similar to what we've seen from Ali Sentnor the last few camps that can play a good central role for this team, whether it's with all the stars, complementary to them, or in times when they're not there, being the center of things. And those are two quote unquote 10s who can still be good even if they don't touch the ball every possession and they don't dominate the game in every single facet. We've got more time to talk about these teams, this team, because we've got 3 games coming up, which is really, really fun. And that's a nice long window for Emma Hayes to sort of put things in place. And we're going to get to watch one of them in Denver, which is the future of the NWSL as well. We will have your weekend recap coming once again next week, then the international break. So we'll cover some of this. We'll we'll put our heads together and come up with a couple cool ideas of what we want to talk about as well in this break. And then we're into the second half of this season. Feels even crazier than last year. So something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And don't forget to tune into all of Jordan's game at the Club World Cup. And we'll talk to you all again very, very soon.